Ahoy! So you know how there's certain games that just don't need to be reviewed anymore? Because good grief, what else is there to say about them? Games like Tetris, Super Mario World, Minecraft, Wii Sports, and Sonic 2! Well, considering I've made videos for 2 of these games already, why not make it 3? Here's 11 minutes on why Sonic 2 is great.
Sonic the Hedgehog, a title that was as fun as it was frustrating. And while Sonic 1 maybe look back at with a squinchy expression these days, but back in the day it was the gigantic release Sega needed it to be. It quickly established Sonic as a household name and made the Genesis a hot commodity. So obviously Sega started working on a sequel. It started with programmers Yuji Naka and Hirokazu Yasukura, who developed the first Sonic, moving from Japan to California to make Sonic 2. The development of this game was troubled as there was a natural language barrier and also time constraints with a lot of content needing to be cut out. It released on November 21st, 1992 worldwide and sold an estimated 2 million copies in the first week. This was a gigantic release. People loved this game. It was fast, it was fun, and it even cut your vegetables.
Liars!
Sega put all their eggs in the basket for this one with a $10 million marketing campaign towards Sonic Tuesday. And moving forward, this is how I'll only refer to the third day of the week.
Blah 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 blah, nothing I'm saying is new. Sonic 2 was a mammoth of a success, everyone knows that. You can't really find much wrong with it. Besides the fact that it doesn't cut your vegetables, but that's more of a Sega problem. Golden Axe couldn't even do it for me. But damn it, I as a Mario fan will find something wrong with this because it cannot possibly be this perfect.
Sonic 2's intro is pretty much a carbon copy of the first Sonic, but it also introduces the big addition this game makes, Tails. That's right, Sonic 2 is the official introduction of miles per hour. Do you get it? Do you get it? Miles per hour? Hardy har har. We just call him Tails. When you play Sonic 2, you will see Tails accompanying us on our adventure, and I think it's awesome. Tails helps us as he can help us collect rings, kill enemies, and I'm not sure if this is intentional, but he has even helped me get a clue on what I need to do sometimes. Tails mostly shadows Sonic, but he does often break off and start getting into his own trouble, and it's got its own entertainment factor, as you'll often be doing your thing, but you'll hear sound effects of Tails up to no good off screen. I understand this might not be intentional, and whatever Tails is doing is just the NPC trying to keep up with Sonic, but it added its own charm, and overall, it made the adventure feel more fun, like I'm doing it with a pal. And if you want to do it with an actual pal, you can have a second player take control of Tails and play alongside you. Player 2 can help collect rings, kill enemies, and even bosses. The only downside to playing Tails is the fact that you can't really die. He'll keep coming back, like a rash, which takes away some of the fun. But if you're playing with a younger sibling or something, it's actually perfect. They get the fun of actually playing instead of having an unplugged controller, and it doesn't have to negatively affect you. Sonic 2 does also have some sort of multiplayer race mode, but I couldn't get Velbos to play with me. He's been locked in with Black Ops 6, so I have no comment on multiplayer. The story is pretty much the same thing. Dr. Eggman is doing bad things and we gotta stop him. Sonic 2 is pretty much identical to Sonic 1. We got a 2D platformer where we gotta start at the left, make it to the right and don't die in the middle, collect rings, they are our life support, same 3 powers from the last game, and enemies that we can only kill while in ball form. Now the other big thing Sonic 2 added was the spin dash. Hold down the controller, mash the buttons, and boom, a quick burst of speed. It's such a useful move to have as it helps us blast up slopes, something Sonic has trouble with. But the spin dash also makes the game much faster, and good lord it gets so much faster. Sonic just starts flying across the screen and breezing through levels and obstacles, and it's amazing and so satisfying to watch. Sonic 2 accomplishes a perfect balance of giving us platforming challenges and the pleasure of being able to just run and blast through a course. Speaking of the courses, my biggest issue with Sonic 1 was its levels, and especially with how it laid them out. So how are they here? Well, for one, the way the game structures its level layout is altered. Instead of 3 acts per zone, it's now 2, but the levels are much larger and feel fully fleshed out with a variety of different paths for us to take, making every playthrough feel fresh and new. It also incredibly accomplishes a balance of having longer levels, yet keeping the game fast-paced as you progress from one zone to another. But what about the zones themselves? Is there a roller coaster of emotions that Sonic 1 was? Well, let's go through them. Emerald Hill Zone is pretty much Green Hill Zone again, and all the goodness that comes from that. It's a great first zone that gets your feet wet for what's to come. Chemical Plant was our second zone, and where the second zone in Sonic 1 was a major slowdown, here in Sonic 2 is the exact opposite, cause holy shit, he's going so fast! Chemical Plant was an awesome follow-up. It had some nice precise platforming and plenty of speedy moments. The only downside to the zone is how you'll oftentimes enter these pipes that will just take you to another random part of the level. So the exploration is largely RNG based, which is kind of annoying. We then have Aquatic Run Zone.
Crap, not a water level.
Oh, the water levels from Sonic 1, the trauma you gave me.
No!
The bright side of Aquatic Run Zone is the fact that there are paths you can take to avoid entering the water entirely, because God almighty, Sonic underwater is as bad as ever. So I do very much appreciate we can get through these acts without getting Sonic's little hedgehog toes wet. But with that said, I'm still not a fan of the zone, because while Sonic 2 overall looks amazing in its art style, Aquatic Run just always looks nauseating with all the different moving parts in the background and foreground. Casino Night Zone is next, and this, right here, this is my jam. I've talked about it in a previous video that I grew up in a casino, so anything that resembles that gives me warmth and comfort. There's a reason I'm in debt to Luigi. Casino Night instills that same warmth and comfort, even though I didn't play Sonic 2 growing up. It just makes me feel like I did. Gameplay wise, it doesn't have much happening, there aren't many enemies around, as our biggest foe here is addiction. Casino Night has slots where we have a chance to win rings, and this isn't good for my psyche. And I spend way too much time doing this. But anyway, Casino Night is a fine chilled playthrough. It's a good zone to farm lives, though I can admit actually navigating it is a pain as Sonic gets bounced around a lot. Hilltop Zone feels like another Emerald Hill Zone, but it does have some really fun parts where we go underground and must escape a collapsing cave with rising lava. Mystic Cave Zone is next, and I really like the aesthetic of this one, but I don't have much else to report here. Oil Ocean is next, and it is another great zone. I love the theme, and if anything, it reminds me of the factory levels from Donkey Kong Country. I know I haven't really made many comments on the last 3 zones, but that's because there isn't much to say. They are all great. Rather than the inconsistent bullshit from Sonic 1, Sonic 2 is very consistent with its level designs. They are all fun, expansive, and great on a replay. Sonic 2 improves a ton over Sonic 1, but it does still retain some of the jank. The game still has moments that are completely unfair, enemies legit pop out of nowhere sometimes, and the hitboxes are wonky as hell. I still hate the fact that we lose all our rings upon taking damage, but on the bright side, extra lives are easier to find.
Sonic 2 isn't like Sonic 1 where I was dreading to play through certain zones. Every place we got to explore was a lot of fun. And yes, Aquatic Zone might be my least favorite, but again, the game gives you a path where you can avoid the water altogether. So, that's pretty great! But anyway, it's time for the last traditional zone in Sonic 2.
Metropolis, and oh Christ.
Actually, never mind, I don't want to talk about Metropolis Zone yet. Let's instead focus on the bonus stages.
So to me, the 3 big additions that make Sonic 2 so great are Tails, the Spin Dash, and the special stages that require you to collect 50 rings, reach a checkpoint, and jump into the stars that appear to access this. You get transported into this 3D obstacle course where you gotta collect rings and dodge bombs, and if you are successful in acquiring the prerequisite number of rings, you get a Chaos Emerald. And if you don't have enough rings, it hurts. You're booted back out and you have to find another checkpoint and collect 50 rings again to have another shot. It is so much fun doing these. The special stages are really tough and require a lot of memorization and coordination, especially with Tails, as he can also collect rings, but he can also lose rings, so he's as much of a liability as he is helpful. But if there's 2 of you playing, then you can control both characters individually, and there's even more coordinating and planning to try to collect rings, and honestly, some of my favorite gaming memories were trying to knock these out with a buddy. But now you gotta ask, what's the point? Well, if you manage to successfully collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, you gain the ability to turn into Super Sonic. Oh hell yeah! It's pretty much invincibility as you get to power through the stages, given you have enough rings to sustain your form. It's an incredible reward for your efforts. Every act in the game has a couple of checkpoints, so it is possible to get Supersonic early into the game, which is a hell of a motivator to do these. It encourages you to explore the levels to try to find the checkpoints and collect rings. It all comes together so nicely. Bonus stages went from being the most forgettable part of Sonic 1 to the most memorable part of Sonic 2. I applaud you. Okay, I guess I have to talk about Metropolis Zone. I f***ing hate it. It's just so unfair. It's so long, so much garbage everywhere, and the place just sets you up for death. And the enemies, oh good god, the enemies, they are the worst. Especially these starfish who will either explode and launch spikes at you, or they just won't do it and just stand there menacingly, psyching me out. The biggest sin Metropolis Zone commits against humanity is the fact that it has a 3rd act. Every zone up to this point only had 2, and this nightmare wants 3? But after you're done getting through the zone and completing therapy, we have our final 3 one-act zones. The first is Sky Chase, where we are on Tails' plane, and while at first controlling it is a bit clunky as you don't control the plane but instead you control Sonic and Tails moves the plane under you, so there's a bit of delay with movement, but it's not a big deal as the screen doesn't have a lot happening, so plane controls don't really hamper anything. If anything, the level actually had a pleasant vibe to it. The words Wing Fortress Zone are actually a synonym to the statement, "I'm gonna throw myself off this fucking balcony." It starts with you watching a cutscene of Tails' plane approaching an airship before getting shot down, and then you die and lose a life.
Huh?
Yeah, you're supposed to jump off the plane onto the platform. Didn't you see the indication?
What indication?
God damn it, Sonic 2, you can't be wasting my lives like this when a game over will boot me back to start. Anyway, Wing Fortress Zone is stressful. It's so long, it's so confusing, and it's so annoying as it'll sometimes just fling you off stage. With this zone, it's a coin flip whether something hurts you or not, and it's also a coin flip on whether or not something's a platform or just part of the background. Beating this zone never feels like beating it. It just feels like it's over. And then we reach the finale, the Death Egg Zone. It starts with a boss fight against a robotic Silver Sonic, and it's a challenge of a fight, though you can cheese it if you can just chain your hits together. After you beat Silver Sonic, you get a brief chase scene where you watch the game insult your intelligence as you watch a fat guy outrun the fastest thing alive.
Huh.
So the fastest thing alive, Dr. Eggman, jumps to a giant robot, and this is the final boss. By the way, all the boss battles in the game are great. This, however, is annoying, and it's not because of the fact that this has an inconsistent hitbox, not the fact that the Death Egg Zone has no rings everywhere so you have to beat this game without taking any damage. It's actually a pain because every time you die, you have to also beat Silver Sonic again, and there's no checkpoint in between. That was extremely annoying. But anyway, you beat Eggman and Sonic escapes the exploding Death Egg, and the day is saved. Yeah, this is one of the greatest video games of all time.
And that was Sonic 2. And while the final levels were a pain to get through, I just gotta remember, it's a platformer. With those type of games, the final levels are usually a nightmare. And if anything, beating it felt like an accomplishment.
Sonic 2 is incredible. It's so much fun. The graphics are so colorful and lively across all zones. The soundtrack is legendary, and trying to complete the special zones are no doubt my favorite thing to do. But outside of that, the game is bigger than itself. It introduced so much to the Sonic series, and is where Sonic truly reached top tier status as a video game icon. It's no surprise that Sega tries to make this game available on every platform possible. You can even have it on your phone. This undoubtedly is where the franchise peaks, as Sonic has never released a title as impactful as Sonic 2. It's sensational, but you already knew that.
I just can't find anything I hate about it. But damn it, as a Mario fan, I can't get through this whole video without dogging on it somehow. No, I gotta find something about it that sucks. I know it's a classic, but if we're being honest with ourselves, the cover art is actually pretty mid.